So, according to our good friend Google, an independent creator is usually an individual or a very small group of individuals who create some form of art, whether that be writing or animation or music or what have you. And it's solo created by those few people. They don't have a team backing them, and it's funded by the same individuals who are creating the works. And I feel like that is a satisfactory definition to go on when talking about independent creation, independent creators, and what defines an independent creator versus what defines someone who is part of a larger conglomerate. And what's more, I am an independent author. I am the producer of my own independent animation, and I do independent music production as well. So I feel that I have a pretty good grasp of the independent markets to be able to speak on behalf of these sorts of subjects. Independent animation has been blowing up in recent months, probably years at this point. Hazbin Hotel was really the first one to like blow up and get major mainstream success, and then after that one, we now have the Amazing Digital Circus, and these are huge wins for the indie animation market, but it also is driving a bit of a wedge in the community, and a lot of people are dismissing, especially the Amazing Digital Circus, as not an independent project. And by the definition that I just provided, I would say that that argument holds valid. Gooseworks is the actual company behind the Amazing Digital Circus, but they create the animation in conjunction with Glitch Productions or Glitch Studios. I can never remember if it's Productions or Studios. Is the company that they are producing this content through. And so, by the previous definition, they are not funding that entirely out of pocket. Like, I'm sure Gooseworks does front the cost a little bit, but at the end of the day, most of the cost is fronted by a different company or a third party or someone else, which is, to me, a pretty big dividing factor as to the difference between an independent project and a more official production. With my novels, I write them all myself. I do 1/3 of the editing, and then I have two other editors who do 2/3 and three and the final bit of it, respectively. And I do that mainly because a single individual cannot objectively edit their own work, especially not that many times over. I frequently, with my books, run into an issue where I'm blind to the text, and it's like I know what the text is supposed to say, so I don't notice the mistakes in the text because I just read over it the way that it's intended to be read. And they have like read aloud features now, which are very helpful in spotting those mistakes or differences. But ultimately, it's just me and two other people, and those two other people are paid to do the work. It's not like I just have a buddy editing it for me, and I pay them good money, but it's all completely out of pocket. And then music production is the same way. I usually will get a little melody in my head, and I'm like, that would make a fun little ditty. And so I put the melody into a full form, and then I send the lyrics and melody that I developed off to somebody who's capable of actually producing a song from it. And then I will usually re-record my vocals over it and turn that into a more official song. And so the idea there is, again, it's just me and a single other individual embarking upon creating this project. and it's again completely and utterly funded by me, and so just the single individual. With animation, it's very much so the same thing. I do all the voice acting, I write the script, they're all my character designs. The only part of that that I hire out is the animation, and I just use a single animator on Fiverr, and together we bring this project together. And again, it's just me and one other person, and completely and solely funded by me. And so I guess it does beg the bigger question of, is it the funding, like, and to get philosophical with you for a moment, there's a big question, and I don't remember the actual theory behind it. It's like the ship of a thesis or something like that, but it's a big philosophical thing where, when does this boat stop being itself? If you have this boat, and we're going to call it Baloney Boat, and if you have Baloney Boat and you take one of the original planks off of Baloney Boat and you replace it with a new plank, is that boat still Baloney Boat, or is it a new boat entirely? And if it is still Baloney Boat, at what point in time does it stop being Baloney Boat? Does it stop being Baloney Boat when all of its original pieces have been completely replaced? Does it stop being Baloney Boat when 50% of their original pieces have been replaced? And you can apply this to the definition of an independent creator. Do the products that they create stop being independent the moment that they get funding from a bigger source, or the moment that they get a larger team behind the project? At what point in time do these things dictate that something is no longer independent? If it's actually the size of the team that dictates it, then you can very much so make the argument that any independent animation that has a large voice acting team probably is no longer independent if the size of the team makes that much of a difference. And that's where the lines get blurred and the lines get hard to muddy. And it's like, what does it matter at the end of the day if Glitch or if the Amazing Digital Circus is an indie creation or is not? And I think it does matter, because the impact that it has on the industry on YouTube as a whole is affected by its legitimacy as an independent project. What's more, even if it were independent once upon a time, it's pretty safe to say that it is not present tense anymore, because it has now secured a deal with Amazon, and I'm willing to bet Amazon's coughing over money for the project as well. So you now have Glitch Studios, who is funding the project, and you now have Netflix, who is funding the project, and then you also, on top of all that, will have, I'm sure, Gooseworks is still throwing money at it as well. And again, it now has 3 different funnels of income, and that's not including like fan merch and all of those things. And so, is it officially no longer an independent animation? And how does that affect its impact on the industry? And being indie in and of itself is a very fickle thing. Hipsters are notorious for following indie trends, and they will listen to independent musicians, they'll watch independent films, they'll read independently published books until those people reach the mainstream, until they reach popular media. And at that point in time, the hipsters will move on to whomever or whatever is next, and they'll leave the rest of the world to kind of carry that along. And a true hipster does this sort of thing unintentionally. They don't do it with the intentions of being a hipster. They do it with the intentions of, oh, I really liked this thing, and now it's grown into popularity, and for one reason or another, it's lost its identity to me, and I'm going to move on from it. And I think understanding the ideals and purposes of hipsters kind of helps us understand the life cycle of an independent project. I, on top of being an independent creator, am a notorious hipster. And again, that's unintentionally so. I don't set out with the goal of finding unpopular content and then I don't purposely abandon it just because it's become popular. The big thing for me and for a lot of people is a lot of these shows and this content, they will make changes to adhere to their new popularity. And that is the official point in which an independent project dies. Because there's many differences, obviously, between an independent project and a traditionally published product or project, but the biggest one is the creative freedom. As an independent creator, you have complete creative freedom to do whatever the heck you want with the project. You don't have a producer or somebody else who has stake in the game telling you, ew, I don't want to do that, or, ooh, that sounds like a better idea, let's do this instead. And so the moment that you have other people stepping in on your product and on what it is, your vision, is the moment that you lose track and you lose any credibility as a independent creator in that very moment. There's a lot of stages and steps along the way that a project can lose faith or lose face with the audience, and people will stop considering it to be an independent film at that point. And that is very much so something that is good to observe, because different people will understand at different points in time when something is considered to be independent and when it is officially not. And so for me personally, as an independent creator, I lose my faith in something being an independent creation when it starts being funded by someone other than the individual. And to provide clarity there, because there's a lot of people who will open up a Patreon or will leverage merch sales to help fund the project. I still consider those to be independent projects because they're not funded by another production company or something more official. They're funded by the money that is still coming out of the artist's pocket. It's just coming from a different place. Like right now, the money that I spend on this all comes from my work salary. But if I started getting money through Patreon and putting that towards it, then that's a different source of income that I'm still pulling from my personal account to fund this project. Now, if I had a producer come up to me and they're like, hey, I really like what you're doing with Compression, man, you've really got some really fabulous stuff going on there. If they came up to me and said that they were going to give me $2,500 a month to produce an episode, then I would be, at that point, I would no longer consider myself to be an independent animator creator at that point in time for that particular product line that I produce, because it's being funded by someone else. Now, Sally Joe over on the internet may not care that it's being funded by someone else. Their vision of what is and what isn't an indie animation or an independent project or anything like that is going to vary from the person immediately next to them and the person immediately next to them. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that when we start talking about and having these debates over like what is independent and what is traditionally produced or published. And as we have those conversations, and we better understand what is and what isn't, I think that is when we can start to have better conversations about these things. Because I think right now, a lot of it is like people are very competitive and they love to compete and they love to pit things against each other. And right now we have the whole digital, Amazing Digital Circus versus Hazbin Hotel thing going on. Everybody's just like, oh, Hazbin Hotel's better, or Digital Circus is better, because they have this competitive nature that means that they have to force these things to compete, and they have to have one be better than the other. And it's unfortunate because we really should come together as a community and help the community grow. Instead of fighting each other over which one we like more, we should be coming together and figuring out how we as a community can fund not only those two projects, but more projects to come. And I think Glitch Media is doing great things for indie animation in that they are a production company that is targeting any indie animators, and all they're really doing is helping them to accomplish their vision. They're not taking a lot of creative control, they're not directing things and trying to be more than just a production company at that point. And that's an incredible move for indie creators. It's an incredible move for indie animation creation as a whole. And so if we could come together and decide how we as a community want to treat our product, I believe that would be a much better way to go about doing things than for us to just decide that, ooh, we hate this project because of X, and we hate this project because of Y, and this project's not even independent because of this, and that project is because of that. Again, the definition of an independent project or a creator is a subjective thing. It's odd because definitions tend to be a lot more objective than subjective, but one cannot simply answer the question of, is the Amazing Digital Circus an independent project, or was it ever an independent project for that matter, because Gooseworks was always working with Glitch to have it created. And if your definition of an independent creation or creator is something that doesn't have a large team behind it or financial backing outside of the creator's own pocket, then right then and there, right out the gate, it doesn't qualify by your own standards or whomever holds those standards. And so then to just understand and to recognize that, okay, these are not the same standards that I hold, but it could be different from that guy's standards or from that person's standards or for her standards or whomever. And instead of getting hung up on the competition of it all, instead of getting hung up on who's better, who's doing this, who's doing that, are they independent and all that, let's focus instead on the content itself. Because we are experiencing a bit of a renaissance in at least the animation scene. We now have two animations that have blown up so much on YouTube that they've gotten these amazing deals with major production companies. Amazon Studios grabbed up Hazbin Hotel in a flash. Like, it was instantly done. That was it. And then now we have Netflix snagging up the Amazing Digital Circus, just like that. As soon as it started to blow up, someone was interested. And those are huge strides in the animation scene. And they're succeeding on those platforms and in those markets, which means that there is a space for independent content to grow bigger than the major studio brand content that's being created. And I think it has a lot to do with, like, the audience of people who experience these things on a deeper level. You'll always have your surface audience, and your surface audience will always outweigh the people who are just even one layer deeper than that. Now, the problem with your surface audience is they're honestly not very profitable. They're the biggest group of people and they're the loudest group of people, but they are going to do the bare minimum that they need to do to watch their show, and that's it. They're not going to go out and buy the plushies. They're not going to go out and buy the t-shirts. They're not going to go out and buy the DVDs. They're not going to do any of that. They're just going to watch the show and then move on with their life. And then you have the people with the layer under that, and they're probably the best people to target because they will take it a step further. They will support it in some way, shape, or form. There's a layer behind them even more of the people who are just diehards, will buy everything, anything, and everything dedicated to this show. And those people are great to market towards as well. But realistically, you want to stay in that middle ground of people who will actually support your show. And the problem that we're having with modern TV and with streaming services is that they don't appeal to anyone in that audience. They only appeal to the mass people. And the mass people are going to pay their basic subscription price, watch what they want to see, and move on with their life. They're not going to invest in these shows. And what we have now is just a bunch of conglomerate industries making shows that they think will keep people's attention instead of making shows that are at all meaningful or have any sort of heart or gumption to them. And people are getting fed up with it. Even the occasional casual viewer is getting fed up with the product that we have in front of us right now. And so as a result, we've been veering away from the traditional market of things and going towards the independent market instead. And that's been great for us. But we just have to be careful that we don't blur the lines between the two so much so that the independent market just becomes the corporate conglomerate all over again. And part of it is, I think the world exists and works in cycles, and eventually we will have that cycle. Like, I think we will have a cycle where independent creators or creations that exist outside of these large conglomerates will take precedence thanks to things like this. And it's hard to deny the numbers. Like, the Amazing Digital Circus has like 350 million views. You cannot deny those numbers and that success. And what'll happen is they will eventually take over, they will become mainstream, and then we'll cycle through something else, just like we always do. But my biggest takeaway from this video is just understanding that people have different standards for what makes something, whatever that something is. In this case, it's what makes it an independent creation. And understanding and respecting other people's thoughts and opinions on the matter. And also, like, coming together better as a community and stop being at each other's throats for anything and everything that we can possibly be at each other's throats for. Instead, let's sit back and appreciate the fact that we're now experiencing a time where indie animation is allowed to flourish so that we can have better, more creative content to enjoy. And that is what we need to focus on more than the silly competition of it all. Let's come together as a community, figure out how we can grow as a community, and let's stand out as a community and show Disney that we don't care, or whatever production company. Disney's just the first one that comes to mind, but show them that we don't care for the product that they're putting out anymore. We would rather watch whatever Glitch Studios is putting out. And that, I think, would be the biggest statement that we could ever make. And if you're interested at all in supporting me, please follow the link in the bio and watch you some Compression Man. I happen to think it's a fire animation, and I hope you do too. Until then, thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.